welcome back to my channel. Today we'll be reviewing The Missing Piece by Kuenwa Weilu. Before we get started, of course, there probably will be spoilers, so if you don't want this novel spoiled, then you should probably leave now. No worries, I'll catch you next time. And before we dive in too deep, let's go over some content warnings. There may be references to kidnapping, death, torture, abuse, PTSD, prostitution, and rape due to mistaken identity as it appears in this novel. If you're all good with that though, let's go ahead and get started. Shinhwa is an art school graduate. Unfortunately, by the time he graduated and earned a job in his field, he was abducted, and as a result of the trauma from that incident, he was unable to use his right hand to paint. However, he thankfully escaped the incident with his life thanks to Ming Shui. To pay back Ming Shui's help, Shinhwa is in a contractor relationship with him. Also, that Ming Shui's younger sister can marry Shouyang, her childhood friend and Shinhwa's ex, without worrying about Shinhwa and Shouyang getting back together. 3 years have passed as Shinhwa and Anan, Ming Shui's sister, left to study abroad together. Though it's a fake relationship, the lines between fantasy and reality begin to blur, especially when Shouyang and Ming Shui's sister come back from studying abroad together. Now with Shinhwa right in front of Shouyang, he doesn't try to hide the fact that he's still attracted to Shinhwa, even as his engagement with the sister is publicly announced. While Shinhwa is still attracted to Shouyang, even if only due to the memories before his traumatic experience, he grows closer to the sister, and Ming Shui's affections become more and more real. Who and what Shinhwa wants for himself becomes more and more unclear. Will Shinhwa forsake Ming Shui and his sister to return to the familiar love he had with Shouyang, or will Shinhwa take the plunge and trade in his contractual relationship with Ming Shui for something real? First off, this needed another pass over by editors. I read the Kindle version, and the number of typos and grammatical errors is hard to ignore. I'm also not sure if it's just due to the translation or if this is genuinely how it was written, but the writing is pretty stilted. It seems to find its groove halfway through, only to lose it again and return to that stale, choppy sentence structure. The story itself I actually enjoyed, melodrama and all, but the writing style made it really hard to enjoy. I wish I could find another translation to compare, as I'm unsure if this is a great representation of the source material. Now for the story itself. I honestly found the whole sequence of Shinhwa confusing Ming Shui for Shouyang both beautiful and heart-wrenching. I certainly disagreed with Ming Shui taking advantage of the situation and stringing Shinhwa along, but something about that desperation and hurt was really moving. Ming Shui was desperate for a connection and to be seen, while Shinhwa just wanted to be loved and to feel he could rely on someone else. So these two broken people took solace in each other through this horrible situation. This setup also makes it that much more meaningful when Ming Shui asks Shinhwa to say his name just because it proves that Shinhwa does see him as who he really is and ultimately does love the man in front of him. Also, when Shinhwa calls Ming Shui and feels loved simply because Ming Shui answers because Shouyang never would, oh, my heart shattered. That was beautifully set up in my opinion. So let's talk about Ming Shui for a second. He's your standard asshole top, which I find is pretty common in Danmai. He refuses to say anything out loud, which inadvertently leads to a whole pile of messy misunderstandings. He also refuses to listen a lot of the time, leading to even more misunderstandings and pain for both parties. If you hate misunderstandings caused by refusal to communicate, this is definitely not your story. While most of the trouble is caused by external forces and trauma, the rest is due to the couple's inability to communicate with each other, primarily due to Ming Shui. Almost all of the big reveals were just because of withheld information or because Ming Shui didn't want to hear an explanation from Shinhwa. It was very frustrating to say the least. Now let's talk about the extra stories. Most of them should not have been extras. I wish they'd been interlaced into the main narrative because they add a lot of necessary context that, had the story not had it, made some story elements lose depth and sensibility. However, I think some stories add absolutely nothing to the main couple or the overarching story at all, and I wish they'd just been left out altogether. Don't get me wrong, there are a few stories that I actually would call extras that are cute and should have been added as they are, but those are far and few in between all of the other extra stories that have been added. There are over 10 extra stories, just to give you an idea of how many there are. Also, it's really odd how the extra stories were added in and arranged, as they seem haphazardly thrown in without any real rhyme or reason. Again, this probably wouldn't be an issue had most of them actually been utilized in the main story's timeline rather than just tacked on at the end. Still, they probably could have also just been organized better at the end. Part of me wishes this wasn't my first foray into Danmei and Chinese novels because I think the piece's quality was severely diminished due to poor editing and possibly a poor translation. Obviously, I'm not an expert, so I don't feel comfortable saying for certain one way or another. Um, but at the same time, I did enjoy the story, and it makes me want to explore what other stories are out there in these realms. So I guess ultimately I'm glad I read it. I'm just disappointed in the quality. If there are better official translations, I would definitely recommend those over the version I read. I would also appreciate any recommendations. If they exist, please. Only official sources. Otherwise, I don't think I would recommend this to anyone who's just getting into Danmei or Chinese novels, as I'm not sure this is the best representation. So, have you read The Missing Piece? If so, what do you think? Do you agree with my assessment? Do you not? Let me know and comment below. Otherwise, I'll catch you next time. Bye!